Welcome guys back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Vaida and it's been a joy to be sharing these videos with you, and I trust it's encouraging us to move to a more and more financial freedom in our lives. We looked in the previous video how China is on the way to be the most dominant and influential people on earth by 2026. We discussed some of the interesting facts why the answer to the upcoming financial crisis is found in the Bible and the goal for this channel. So in this video, I want to deal with some misconceptions about money, and if you've had any misconceptions, I declare that they will be cut out, or at least you are provoked to think some of them through. First, I want to share a personal story. I was raised with misconceptions about finances, being raised in the church life, especially in the evangelical circles. Now, growing up in the church life, the only time they were teaching about money in the pulpit was when they needed to raise up money for building a church or so. I was raised in a church where finances was not freely talked about unless it was a drive for money, as I said before. Many churches are like this because there is so much fear to talk about it. But Jesus said how we manage our finances is really the training ground how we are going to manage spiritual responsibility. You see, prosperity is inherent in the gospel, and the gospel touches the whole of life. But the picture I was given was one of the more spiritual you are, the poorer you became. I grew up in a church with a certain picture of missionary. Now, when I say this, I want to highly respect anyone that has ever gone out on the mission field to bring the good news of Jesus Christ. But in the denomination that I was, I realized that when a missionary came to our church, I'm sure I'm not the only one who lived this, but there was normally a her, because women are more likely willing to go, and many churches didn't give women the opportunity at home, so they went out for that opportunity. But I noticed when they came back from the missionary field that she'll be fairly plain. You could pretty much estimate her hair would be covered with a head kerchief and what it will look like, and the simple clothes she would wear. I realized that with this picture is something wrong, because it was saying something into my young mind. The more you go for God, the more you give your life to God, the poorer you are going to get. We would even take up offerings sometimes, second-hand clothes, to send to the missionaries. And I'm thinking, what is that really? Now, years later, I began to think about it more and more. But who do we work for, those of us who are in the marketplace? Aren't we working also for God? Why is that we feel somehow that when someone gives their life to work for God out in some mission field somewhere, they are now worthy of our second-hand clothes, but because we don't pay their price, we are worthy of new clothes? Now, that didn't seem just to me somehow, and I was thinking these things through, and I realized that there is something wrong with this picture. I began to realize we were putting Christianity, or serving God, or working for God, in such a place that wasn't wrapped around with the abundance of God. And the mindset was building up in my mind. I will deal with that in the next videos. That Jesus must have been the same, and the disciples as well. I had a picture of Jesus like a guru with a bunch of hippies wandering around in the Middle East, because everything that I was hearing and started to see was pointing more to a poverty mentality than a prosperity mentality. You see, Jesus didn't ask us to pray for people to go to the mission field, but asked us to pray for laborers to go to the harvest. So I realized that so many of these lives have been worn out, being out in places with no harvest, no response, came back, and then they didn't have no real retirement, came back, lived on little money, came back to no house to live in, came back to live in a little room somewhere, and then everything that they have given seemed to have come to little fruit and a lot of disappointment. So I was saddened in my heart. Now, before we can enter into understanding how all this kingdom economy principle works, I want to deal with these misconceptions that could hold us back from it. Here is the basic misconception that most of you have concerning God and finances. The misconception is this: God is not concerned about money or how we exercise stewardship over our prosperity or finances of the world. That's a misconception. Now, I don't know from where, but that there is this idea in many people's minds that God is really only interested in the spiritual things. Everything else really, He's not that interested in. We are going to blow that one right out of the water today, obviously, and over the time. Now, basically, that misconception is that money is evil and of no importance, but that's really dualism. It's the division that God never makes. It's like the division between the secular and the sacred. That's a non-biblical division. There is not just the spiritual and then the carnal, the ordinary, but God looks down from a biblical worldview and sees the whole. So the answer to that misconception is simply this: it's wrong. Why? Because God is very concerned about money. Now maybe you ask yourself, how do you know that, Sam? So how do I know this? Because I'm a very diligent student. Like I said in the previous video, I began to study the topic because I was really interested in, and I found something astonishing. So basically, I'm just going to give you the facts. By the way, Jesus Christ said more about money than any other topic. Now look, the Bible contains 215 verses on believing, 218 verses on salvation, 500 verses on prayer, less than 500 verses on faith, but more than 2,350 verses which deal with people's responsibility in regards to money and material possessions and the subject of housekeeping or managing. Around 16 out of 38 parables of Jesus deal with your responsibility in regards to money and possessions. 1 out of 6 verses in the Gospels concern themselves with the right or wrong use of money and material possessions. Numbers chapter 7 is the longest chapter in the Bible. It contains 2,000 words and it's all about giving. So Jesus dealt with money because money matters. God is very concerned about money. One final thought. Now everybody knows that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are one God. Spirit, soul, and body makes up one man. We are not divided. Jesus died to release a kingdom that would benefit the whole man. You see, salvation is for the whole person. And therefore, I don't want this breakup in understanding. We need to understand that in the economic realm, as well as in every realm of life, a part of our call is to provoke others to jealousy. That we are going to be living in a place and in a way that provokes people to say, well, how come that with all the need that surrounds us, financial recession, in the kingdom economy, you seem to be living in a way with one another that there is no need amongst you. Actually, like the early church was able to demonstrate. So my friends, do you still doubt that God is not concerned about money? If so, stay tuned, because next time I'm going to deal with the next misconception. Were Jesus and the disciples really poor? I hope this video makes a difference in your life, and if so, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time, have a beautiful day.